Well, hey, everybody, glad to be back with you again. And today we're talking about when it's time to stop learning. David, that sounds kind of interesting topic for a guy like myself who's got 1,000 books behind my head
Well, that's why we decided to do the video today. That's
to
why we
save my
decided
book
to do
fund.
this podcast.
That's right. Stop Chris from spending money on books.
Yes, this is a intervention podcast going on right now.
Yeah. No, it's funny though. I mean, we were just talking before we went live here just how we all fall prey to this that we're going to talk about today. Um, and so it's a very important topic, and I think that we need to really work through this because obviously education learning is vitally important to be successful,
Right,
but there's some people, and many of us can fall into this trap of continuing to learn but not
right,
taking that knowledge and doing something with it, right?
right. Well, and again, we want to say first of all, we are not anti-learning. We are
Right.
pro-learning. I mean, look at the wall behind Chris. I mean, that should be
And
pretty
this isn't a
self.
fake background, and there's lots more
No,
around me.
this is should be pretty self-evident about how we view learning and the importance that we placed on it. We are very much, this is something that I think is critically important because I grew up in a family that didn't value learning, that did not
Mm,
value personal growth, and I saw my parents, I saw my family looping around the same problems again and again and again. And I think just because of my background and where I came from, I became like, why don't you learn another way? Like,
yeah.
why don't you figure out that you don't have to do it this way? And because you keep doing it the same way, you keep having the same problem.
Right.
And eventually you have to realize it. And this comes to all things in life, not just business, but it's your finances, your
Mhm.
relationships, all of these things. If you keep yelling at your spouse, guess what? They're going to keep getting upset at you. It's like, it
Yeah.
sounds very obvious, but it's so ignored. So we are very pro learning, and this is a very important part of the journey, and it's a very important part of you know of all of our lives is to be able to grow as a person. Because
Right.
if you don't grow as a person, you're going to end up like some of those people who, you know, I, I used to jokingly say that age is not an indicator of wisdom,
Yeah.
and I meant that very, very seriously because you can meet somebody that's 75, 80 years old, and you would think, wow, at this point in your life you got a lot of life experience,
Right.
you got a lot of things that you've gone through and done. You should have acquired a lot of wisdom, you should have acquired a lot of things, insights, knowledge, expertise. And yet I meet people all the time who are older than me who absolutely no wisdom there whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just staring at an empty bucket when it comes to that. And I just go, how in the world did you live that long
Yeah.
without knowing better than what you know? And so we are very, very pro learning. We are very much that. But there also comes a point in time, and this is what we wanted to talk about today, is where learning can lead to stagnation.
Yeah.
In other words, you come to a point where, and I know, like, you and I have talked about this, Chris. I don't, I don't read as many business slash marketing books as I did at one point in my life. I just
Mhm.
don't. I just don't read them, and there's a reason. Is because you come to a certain point where I know what they're going to say.
Right.
I've looped around this track enough times that
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you're going to do this next, and then you're going to say that next, and then it's going to be this, and it's going to be that, and you start to hit that point where you have the essence of the topic,
Right.
you know it, and you understand it. This is no longer you sitting there going, wait a minute, how does this work again, or
Yeah.
what is that, or how should I do that? There's going to come that point where much of what you're learning is repetitive.
Yeah.
And when you start to sense that, like, okay, I've read this, and this person, they said a lot of the same things as the last person, and this is starting to
Right.
all sound the same, and it's starting, and that's why I stopped. I can watch a video, and within 5 minutes, I pretty much know whether or not it's worth me continuing to watch it
Right.
because, yeah, I know where this is going,
Yeah.
and you're not going to add anything new to the pile. And it's not that I'm not looking for people who can introduce a new concept. There are definitely new ideas out there,
Right.
but they become harder to find. And yet we have this process and this part in our lives where, especially when it comes to growing our business, okay, we love, a lot of us just love business, and we love the idea of what do you got to do to get this to work? How can we make this successful? How can we do that? And there's a lot of things in there that are really interesting to learn about how all this process works and how it all goes. But we can get a little comfortable in the learning zone and the
Mhm.
learning mode where it almost paralyzes us to actually implement.
Yeah.
And we're studying and we're reading and we're studying and we're reading. And there's those different types of learning that are out there, and we get really really stuck on the studying part, on the reading another book, watching another video, or listening to another podcast and so forth. And we can get really stuck in those because you can learn by studying, you can learn by doing it with somebody. So like find somebody that knows how to do the thing
Mhm.
you're doing and work with them on it for a while. Be their employee or be their intern, or
Mhm.
like you can go work at a new company, and your first
Mm.
few months of working at that company, you're going to learn all sorts of things about how that business works.
Right.
And so much of how I learned, my skills in business and how businesses work was honestly because those years in banking that I had.
Mhm.
And you say, how did you learn how to be an entrepreneur from banking? Well, I was a financial analyst, and my job was to study other businesses and to figure out what makes them tick. How are they making money? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And I got to understand how a business functions and works.
Mhm.
So I'm working with them. But then there comes this point in time where you know that it's time for me to start doing it.
Yeah.
It's time for me to stop studying videos. It's time for me to stop reading books. I need to put myself out there and start doing that. And that's where it can get a little scary.
Yeah.
Let's just be really honest with you. You can get, it can, because now you're moving out of theory.
Mhm.
It's kind of like graduating college, and you've now got your degree in whatever field it is that you
Now
were
you
wanting
actually
to
gotta put it
learn.
into practice.
And now it's time to actually prove that you can do this thing.
Yeah.
And you actually got to go out and find a job, and you got to go out and find some place to go in the world.
But don't you think that's where, I mean, we see this every day, honestly, at least, and honestly, it's kind of every year when graduation hits for especially college, right? Where there's a lot of assumptions made that I'm going to graduate college, immediately find a great job, and be successful like on day one. That's where so many college students, they envision that, they think that, and yet then they run into walls. They struggle to find a job, or they find a job that they don't really like, or isn't a good fit for them. The knowledge didn't lead to immediate success like maybe their expectation was, and so therefore people start to get really discouraged and feel like, a failure or whatever. But a lot of times they just haven't realized that I have to go through the trials and errors. And rarely do you, I always say it this way, your first draft isn't your final draft, right? And so a lot of people think, I think as adults, we think our first draft has to be the final draft. But if you really look at your path, your career, journey in life, there might be 25 drafts along the way, right? Like you just have to keep iterating. And, somebody that, as you were talking, actually, one of the books behind me is by Herman Cain. And I remember reading it years ago. I think it's called CEO of Self. And he talks about his journey. And he was very successful in the corporate world. We learned more about him from radio and politics a few years ago, but really his journey was the corporate, success. But he intentionally took major step back from being a corporate executive at one point to go be a store manager at a Burger King
Mhm.
so that he could learn their systems and learn how to run a Burger King store, because ultimately he was going to become an executive with Burger King, or Pillsbury, I think, may have owned them at the time. But I thought it was really interesting of somebody who was very successful, who had learned a lot and done a lot,
Right.
took a major step back in his, to outsiders, right? It looked like he made a major step backward, but he did that with the intention of learning so he can move forward. So there, for him, it was very strategic, right? And I think that it was all about doing, because he knew that if he was going to be able to be a better leader, a better executive, that he would have to learn the model. He'd have to learn how the business really ran at the ground level. And so it really makes me think about what you're saying here, because I remember, David, a couple years ago, I hit that wall of, I'm hearing the same thing over and over, and it was in the topic of marketing. And I tell my story a lot of, for years, I hated marketing, as I didn't want to talk about it. Excuse me, got my throat messed up this morning. Didn't want to talk about marketing. Didn't pick up a marketing book. Thought it was something I could just maybe get somebody else to do for me. But I kept running into this wall of, I need to know marketing. And finally, I felt like, honestly, I felt like God woke me up one day and said, Chris, you've got to learn this, because this is the wall you're hitting, the obstacle you're facing. Learn it. So I took a deep dive into it for a couple of years, reading pretty much anything and everything that I could get my hands on. And then there was one day, and I don't remember the exact date, but I remember the exact feeling where, like you just said, I'm going, I don't think I'm learning anything new. I think I'm just hearing the same thing repeatedly, different packaging, different voices, different perspectives, but it's the same core principles. And at that point is when I stopped buying marketing books. It was when I stopped saying, I felt like that chapter, or that season of deep diving was over. And I still had those books on my shelf, and I still refer to them occasionally. But the bottom line was, it took, I hit that moment where I was like, okay, enough's enough. I've read a lot. I have all these ideas now. Now it's time to, and it wasn't like I wasn't trying things along the way, but it was that moment of like, Chris, you just had to start really doing these things and testing. And that was probably my hard part of my educational journey, is going, test what you're learning as you go. Don't just try to absorb more, because until you test it, you don't know what really works.
Well, and I agree with that 100%, because there comes this point in time where you're not going to learn anything more from the books, because what you're studying is theory.
Yeah.
You're studying the theory of how things work. And there's always a gap between that theory and practice, because, when you're reading or you're watching those videos or trainings or whatever, you're going to sit there and you're going to learn, well, this is how things could work. This is how things could be, or this is how things have been in the past for someone else. This is how they worked for a different individual. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to how it's going to work when you do it.
Yeah.
And I'll just tell you that whenever I hear a coach someone, or I hear somebody speak on a certain topic, I can tell you very quickly whether or not that person has actually done it.
Mm.
I can pick them out really quick. And I've heard Elon Musk talk about this as well. Is like, used to, when they would interview people, he would talk about how, I'm going to start asking the hard questions about the details, because I'm going to expose the people that just know the subject from the people who have done this.
Yeah.
I want the people who have done it. If you've actually done the thing that we're talking about, it's going to come out in a hurry.
Yeah.
Because you have intimate knowledge of the steps, the processes, what didn't work. Well, I tried that and that didn't work, so I had to adjust and had to do this instead. And I had to go out and do all these other things. And you're speaking from a completely different place.
Yeah.
And he said, he does it all the time when he interviews people. Is that I can pick them out too. Is that if I hear somebody that talks about how things work, I can tell really quickly they haven't actually done it.
Yeah.
And if they haven't done it, I don't want them.
But it's interesting. My nephew, he just graduated from college this past May. And while he was in college, he was doing a co-op, and he was in a IT engineering program, and he was working with a company. And this is as a student. This is amazing. I love this story about what he did, because it's going to, it did change his trajectory. But as an intern or a co-op student, while he's in the middle of college as a sophomore, junior, he was working with this company that worked with Kroger grocery stores. And he figured something out that saved Kroger like $2 million.
Wow.
You think that student became valuable?
Yeah. We're like,
And,
can you do that again?
Yeah, it's like, and so guess what? The company that he co-opted with, he was making over $80,000 a year during his senior year
Wow.
because he was working with the company, and then he went from a full-time student and a part-time co-op to basically a full-time co-op, employee to a part-time student to finish out his college. He was so valuable to them that they were like, no, we need you
Stick
now,
around.
and
Stick
we'll help
around.
you.
Right.
Yeah, we'll help you finish, get through school. Yeah, but they saw the back. But once again, it was about doing, not just sitting in class and theorizing.
Well, and there's another level to this too that comes out, and this is something that I don't think is understood enough. And it's like we have somebody in our group who is really passionate in our DLG group, who's
Mhm,
really passionate about working with salon owners
mhm.
and really passionate. It just has this heart for helping people who run salons and helping people who in the families and everyone associated with it, and has created all sorts of material and courses and programs around that help. And to do that, and she's struggling with how to reach them. But she was like, I have like 30 some right around me that I could go talk to. And I said, well, then that's what you need to do. You need to just
Right,
start going and talking to these people and having conversations with them and introduce yourself to them.
right.
And I could tell she was nervous to go do it and
Sure.
not wanting to do it. But I was messaging with her last night and asking how things were going and everything. And you could just tell she's starting to have some success doing this. She's
Yep.
going in, meeting with these people, and not all of them, but some of them are expressing interest in working with her.
Right,
They're like, wow, yeah, I can tell you really are good at this. And what is happening in this process is she's now building confidence.
right,
And when that confidence gets built, something shifts inside of you. And
right.
this is really ultimately what is why this is so important to go from studying to doing,
Mhm.
is because what ultimately happens inside of you is there's an internal shift, because it goes from, well, I understand the material and I understand the subject matter,
Mhm.
to um, I know I can do this.
Right.
I am very confident in knowing how to do this. I
Yeah.
know that I can pull this off. I know that I can get the job done. And I speak from this place of certainty. I
Right.
speak from this place of like, hey, I know this can happen. I know that this can get done, and I know I can do it.
Well, don't you
And
think?
go
Well, I was
ahead.
gonna say, just yeah, with that in mind, I mean, don't you think this is what we run into a lot with our clients or people we know in the entrepreneurial world, where content creation is kind of the easy part for them, but
Mhm.
selling the content is the hard part, right? And so,
The
you
business
know,
side.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's and that's something we all have to really think about. And we can inadvertently hide behind content creation and never sell anything. We could have great programs that we created, but never sell it because we never put ourselves out there to sell it, never had conversations. That's been, I had to learn that as well. Like, I think I have a really good product, but guess what? Until you test it in the market, you don't know if you have a really good product. But when
Right.
you get it out there, you start getting feedback. I know for me, a year ago, I launched a new program, and working with teams on that program. What I started offering them has morphed over a year of fine tuning and tweaking. They've kind of been my beta group,
Mhm.
and because they've seen things that would help them, and then I started adding that as pieces to the program that I can now offer to any corporation for their team, right? So that first group was really important to get started with, to learn where are the gaps, what are the things we need to change a little bit. And everything has been up leveled, upgraded over the course of a year working with them, because I have these quarterly calls with their senior leadership team, and we talk about what's working well, what could we do differently, or how could we kind of modify something. And by having those conversations after implementing it, now I can iterate that. And now what's exciting is now I've got this package that I can now confidently go to other companies. And then it's funny because I had a sales call just a few weeks ago with another leader from an organization, and I was talking her through all the things that I was doing with this other team and what I offered. And her eyes were getting bigger. Like,
Right.
I basically, she's like, I want that here. And so now we're going through that process of what does that look like for their team, and planning ahead and their budget and everything. Because, but I wouldn't have been there in that conversation without getting that product, getting that program out into the marketplace, testing it, fine tuning it, and
But
developing it to be what it is.
even think about how you even presented it to this client versus how you presented it in the past.
Oh, 100%.
You're now presenting it to this new future client
Right.
with total confidence.
Yes.
It's not I could do this for you.
Right. It's not about vision and what it,
What might happen for you. It's
Yeah.
like, well, this is what I did for them. It's already done.
Mhm.
It's already happened. It's already proven. And they go, really? And now all of a sudden they're going, well, I want that. And it's so
Right.
exactly what you're saying. And so you're speaking from experience. You're speaking from a sense of confidence. You're speaking from a place of certainty.
Mhm.
And people on the other side can sense that.
Yeah.
They sense that you're not talking about a theory of how to do it. You're
Right.
talking from like, doggone it, this person has actually done it.
Right.
They're not talking about maybe that I could do it. No, they're just sitting there very calmly saying, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did
Yep.
that. And these are the results that we got. And they're going, it worked. You did it.
Yeah.
You're the guy. You're the
Yeah.
one. You're the person who can do this. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, everything shifts. But the only way you get there is through reps.
Yeah.
The only way our client in DLG is going to get good at speaking to salon owners is to go out and speak to salon owners.
Yeah.
And just get in her car and start talking to them and meeting with them and carrying on conversation and letting them know who she is and developing relationships with them so that when they need, and several of them are expressing interest now, they're realizing, wow, she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
She knows the space.
And what's crazy, right, is we've seen the inner workings of her program. We know it's going to be a great program, but it's getting those first people to join and jump in, and then she's going to get great testimonials as people do it. And we know that for a fact because she did not develop this in a halfway manner. And I think that's where a lot of people, David, she had the courage, even though it's been uncomfortable, she's had the courage to go knock on those doors, right? She's had to go, so whether that's going physically from location to location, or whether that's through setting up, sending emails and trying to set up Zoom calls or whatever it looks like, you've got to do it. I remember years ago when I first started, I was so clueless about business building and sales. There was a day I went to an area around the mall and I went door to door in like a strip center area talking to business managers in stores. And it was the most uncomfortable thing I did. But I came across one guy that day. I don't remember how many I visited, but I came across one guy who we ended up becoming friends, and he was an entrepreneur too. And we ended up, he taught me some things, but I helped him with some things. But it was one of those things where I had to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and just go do the uncomfortable thing. And, I'm not a door-to-door salesman. I don't have a product like that to go sell necessarily. But what I've done now is I think about, well, who could I best serve? Who are the type of clients I want? Let me start sending some emails to some leaders in associations or certain, businesses, and just say, here's what I offer. Do you ever need, and, sometimes I'll say, do you ever need a speaker for your events? Or are you looking to develop your leaders and you need a program that you just don't have? It's become much more comfortable now doing the cold calling of outreach because of putting in those reps.
And you put in the time, you got the experience, and as a result of sticking with it, you've had some success.
Right.
And you've learned from your mistakes. Like you said, during the first few times you did it, it probably wasn't that good. And it was probably very awkward and it was very nerve-wracking. And that I'm sure came across.
Yep.
Like this person's not comfortable doing what they're doing, but they're doing it anyway. But what ends up happening over time is you breed confidence in yourself once you get a win in there.
Yeah.
Once you have a little success, you go, somebody actually said yes.
Yeah.
And this is amazing. And how do I get another one of those? And all of a sudden now you're excited about the next yes.
Yeah.
And less worried about the next no.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, that's no problem. If you don't, you're not interested, I'll just go on to the next one. And it's fine. And it's not a big deal. And these are the things that it only comes from doing, and this is why there's always that fear element, and we all experience it. We all know what it is. There's this little element of fear where we've learned something and we know how something works now. We've studied it enough that we know the basics of how something works.
Yeah.
But we're afraid to put ourselves out there and actually do it.
Yeah.
Because now the doing part means that we could fail. And the
Yeah.
odds are you will. Anytime you do something for the first time, you likely will fail.
Well, how many times have we talked to people who they do have a great program, or they do have a great offer that they can put out there, but sadly they won't do the hard work and put in those uncomfortable reps, and then they get mad. They either feel like I'm just not able to do this, or what I've been coached or told doesn't work.
Right.
And neither of those things are true, right? It's you have to go out and do it. I can't tell you, honestly, I don't even keep track. Some people keep track of this stuff where I don't know how many no's I've had. I just think about the wins I've had, because, I've offered to speak at different events or different associations or different businesses. And I've had plenty of people say, no, I'm not interested. Or, you just don't hear anything a lot of times when you're trying to do outreach. And so, but I don't worry about those things now, because there is a point you just have to get rejected enough, in a sense, right? Till you're numb to it. And then you can say, yeah, I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. But we have people that we know that they have a vision for their business. They have a good thing they could offer. But if it doesn't happen immediately, if they don't get the big wins, the home runs immediately, they either quit or they pivot to something else and go through the same vicious cycle again and again. And I think that's when you said age doesn't equal wisdom, right? I heard John Maxwell say years ago at a conference, he was like, sometimes you just have 75 years of the same experience one time experience. It's not, compound interest.
It's not being built upon step by step.
Right. Because how many people, just because they're older, like you said, for me, I look at it as, are they really mature people? Just because they're old doesn't mean they're mature and wise, like you said. They just have aged. That was one of my things. I'm like, I don't want to be that person.
Right.
I don't want to get to 80 years old and be the guy who just is old with the same knowledge I had when I was 22.
And those people do exist, sadly.
There's way too many of them out there.
Right.
So we don't want you to do that, folks. We want you to take yes, you need to learn, right? Yes, you need, for some it's books, for some it's podcasts, for some it's conferences, for some it's, working with a coach and a mentor, whatever it may be. But you have to then take however you've learned, you have to then do.
Yeah, and I just want to say this: let's talk just a little bit about how can that happen and how can this actually be implemented in your life, because there is that fear, and not everyone's always going to have the courage to overcome their fears consistently. And and you may have your courage to overcome your fears up to a point or a time or two, but you're going to have your courage to overcome your fears day in and day out and not give up. And what I really believe is this is where it becomes very vital to have accountability in the process. To have someone who's coaching you, someone who's following up with you, someone who's keeping you on track and keeping you moving forward. This past week, I'll use another one of my gym examples because they're always fully present in my mind. This past week, over the last few weeks ago, I tweaked my back doing deadlifts. And so we were lifting pretty heavy and I tweaked my back. So I had to kind of slow down on a lot of the stuff that I was doing because I had tweaked my back. So I was doing different kinds of workouts that weren't going to, working around the back, so to speak. So I was still doing things, but I wasn't working out as hard. And again, I was avoiding doing things that were going to re-injure my back. And so this past week, I was working with my trainer. He goes, all right, back's back to where, it's normal. We're going hard today. Just be ready. And I'm like, all right. And the boy did not lie. Give him that. And he goes, you said your quads are going to be sore this week. I'm just going to tell you right up front before we even do it. You're You're gonna walk. You're gonna have
I'm gonna
sore
feel the
quads.
burn.
You're gonna feel it. Well, I usually work out with him on Mondays and Thursdays, and I showed up on Thursdays, and my legs are still dead. They hurt. I'm every getting up and out of a chair is a very painful exercise. Going up and down stairs. Oh,
You know that there are muscles present that you didn't
oh,
think about before.
well, I'm moving around like an 80-year-old man, and my family's just sitting around laughing at me. I'm like, thanks, everyone. I appreciate the support. But I go to the gym and I'm thinking, well, he'll probably take it a little easy on me because we're supposed to do deadlifts and different things today, and that's leg oriented, and he'll probably not want to push it. And he goes, well, how you feeling? I go, well, my quads are dying. They hurt really, really bad. And I said, my hamstrings feel okay. He goes, okay, well, then we're good to go. And I looked at him and I said, well, but my quads are really hurting. He goes, yeah, but the stuff we're doing today is hamstring related. We're working on the other side of the leg. I go, but what if I hurt my quads? And he goes, well, you'll only hurt your quads if you do it wrong. So don't do it wrong. Do it like I told you to do it and you'll be fine. And I was just like, huh. I'm like, I can't exactly argue with him. But what happened was he pushed me to keep going.
Right.
And today my legs actually feel a lot better than they did yesterday. We made it through the workout just fine. It wasn't a problem. He was 100% right. But having that coach there who understood it better than me, who understood it all, and who wouldn't let me off the hook and wouldn't let me have my excuse, who just looked at me and said, shush, keep going. Just stop complaining. Get your, start lunging. And I'm like, and I was like, well, lunging could hurt my quads. This can like not if he's just looked at me, not if you do it right, it won't. Don't do it wrong. Don't be doing it wrong. Do it the way I taught you. Do it right. And you
but think about it, right? The amount of progress, and you share your gym stories regularly, but I think it's important because the amount of progress that you've experienced over these years with a trainer,
right,
compared to trying to figure it out on your own, trying to fumble your way through it.
And that's exactly my point. And even in your business growth is that, yes, you can try and figure this out on your own. There's absolutely no rule that says you can't go out this and try and do everything by yourself. But do you know how much more valuable it is having somebody who knows this better than you stand by your side and say, hey, don't do that, do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just saved you a mountain of headache, a mountain of frustration, and a mountain of maybe even wasted money.
Sure.
That maybe you're going to waste a whole ton of money on stuff that you didn't need to. And as a result, you're now in a far better place. You're better off giving your coach the money than you are spending 5 times that amount on screw ups.
Right.
And all the headaches.
Well, don't you, think about this, right? I mean, I've heard it said, I know you've heard it said, David, it's like, we're either going to spend time or money, right? Like those are really your only 2 things you're spending. And the time factor is really what I think discourages people the most. Is this takes too long, therefore I give up. Whereas if I spend money working with a coach or joining a program or whatever that speeds up my growth, my success, I may be out that money, but the way I learned to look at it a long time ago now was, but what's my return on that investment? And when I can truly understand the return on the investment from that, that money to get farther faster, I don't feel the pain of the loss of money like I once did. I'd rather lose the money, so to speak, than lose the time, because I can make up the money by knowing how to do something and sell my program, sell my courses, sell my content, whatever. And that's to me, I think that's something that a lot of people really wrestle with in this journey. It's that, like you said, I'll just figure this out on my own. I'll go to YouTube University, as they say, right? And I'll just try to watch as many free videos that are out there. And I'm not saying there's not content that's helpful out there, because there's obviously is. But if you have to kind of patchwork things together and figure things out, and it just doesn't.
Versus working with somebody that knows everything you need to know to get it done, right?
Right, giving you the true path forward. And that's why we created our roadmaps in our Design Launch Grow program, right? Is because we know through experience, these are the steps you have to take to develop your business to the point where you really have the kind of business you dream of. And that took us learning the hard way a long time ago, right? And taking those steps continually, even each iteration of your business, you have to keep working the process. And so, our program that we created, right, is a step-by-step guide to give you the actions you need to take, that you do learn them and then you take action, but you also have the coaches and the community support to help you keep going when things are tough, because they will be tough at times.
Yeah, I agree. So I would just, I've learned, I've learned of all these past 5 years of being in the gym, that if I had gone to the gym on my own, I just would have went to this machine. I would have went to that. I wouldn't have went to this and that. I would just have been randomly doing various things, and I would be in a bad shape, right? I'd be in a bad place right now because I would not have a comprehensive plan in front of me.
Mm,
I would not have a well thought out plan. And then what ends up happening is you only work out this muscle and this muscle, but you're ignoring other muscles that you never even considered that you should be working out. And because you're not doing a good, well rounded plan, you're now going to start injuring yourself because your body is out of sync. It's like some muscles are strong and some muscles are weak. Well,
that's where
it's
you
like
get the big bodybuilder guys with chicken legs.
right, exactly. They've only worked the top half. They never worked the bottom half, and now they're out of balance, and their body's gonna, it's gonna have an effect on their body and on their health because they're out of whack. Well, same thing is like you may be able to do certain things good in your business, but guess what? What happens when you never learn these other skills?
Right.
So it's going to be a problem. That's why you got to get somebody in your corner who knows how to help you,
Yeah.
who's done the whole journey, who can get you from A to B.
Yeah. And you have to be a willing participant and a good student. I'll say this to kind of wrap up my thoughts on this is there's a woman I came across in our community probably about a year or so ago. And she actually asked, she said, Chris, can you help me kind of think through like a business strategy plan? She wanted to start her business and wanted to be an inspirational speaker. And she has a great heart. And I give her credit for that. I know she wants to do good. But we sat down and I probably spent 35, 40 minutes just kind of walking her through a process of here, you need to work on these things and blah, blah. She looked at me, David, across the table. I don't like that. I said, I don't care if you don't like it. This is what you have to do. And she's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, well, then you're not going to have a business. So I tried to reframe it in a little bit, I simplified it a little bit, trying to look at it from a little bit different angle. But she's a terrible student. She thinks she knows everything. She's not being successful. She has a business technically and legally, she set up her LLC and she's done these things. But guess what? She doesn't have clients. She's not getting asked to speak like she wants to. She thinks she's going to be on these big stages globally. There's a little bit of delusion in her thinking, especially right now when she's not even willing to. Sometimes, if you want to be that big stage speaker someday, you got to start with speaking to 5 or 10.
Right.
And she is not listening. And I'm like, you're not coachable. I'm not going to invest my time, energy, and attention in somebody who's not coachable when I know these are the steps you need to take to develop a business that's really going to be profitable and work. So we have to be willing learners. We have to be good students, but we also then, to your point, and to wrap this up today, we have to be good implementers too. We can't just learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and then never put into action, right? So it's the whole, ready, aim, 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 but never firing the gun.
Right.
That's what we're talking about today. You have to fire the gun. You have to go try some things. You have to go figure out some things the hard way, the uncomfortable way. But honestly, David, doing those uncomfortable things gives you confidence as well. Like that didn't hurt as bad as I thought, right? That wasn't as scary as we build up so much in our mind before we ever go out and have that first sales conversation, or before we go speak to that first audience, or before we try that marketing strategy. We have all these fears that are made up, realities. They're not realities. They're just things we're afraid of happening. And rarely do those things happen. Instead, something positive happens. And the other thing I'll say to kind of conclude my thoughts is the thing that helped me the most was thinking more like a scientist who is doing experiments scientists don't get discouraged when they have a theory and they try something and experiment with something that doesn't work. Instead, they make a note that didn't work.
Right.
And they move on to the next experiment to see what would work. And when that finally clicked with me, just how to mentally approach things, I'm like, hey, that just didn't work. It's not that I'm a failure. It's not that I can't do this.
Try a different idea.
I just need to try something different, a different approach.
Yep.
Any final words today as we wrap up?
No, I just think, that's why we have DLG. That's why we do what we do, because people who recognize the value of what it is that having someone in your corner who can guide you, having that roadmap that will show you the path that you go. Because otherwise, people are out there just trying stuff. See it all the time. It's just they're out there trying different things, to try this, to try that. They're never really getting any traction. It's like your friend that you were talking about that you met with, that you're trying stuff, but you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
You're not making any progress because you don't have a good plan.
Right.
Like, I would never be where I am today if I didn't have an actual plan that I was following at the gym. Well, I would never be where I am today in my business if I didn't have a plan.
Right.
If I didn't have people speaking into my life saying, don't do that, do this, this is how you do it, and showing me and teaching me and showing me different ideas and ways of doing things. And if you have that, that's invaluable. And again, we've made Design, Launch, Grow the most affordable business success coaching plan on the planet. Right. Because for as low as $30 a month, you can get access to all the roadmaps, all the content, all the new things that are getting added in. For $147 a month, you can get weekly coaching calls and get on and ask all the questions you want to get all the help you need. I'm like, what in the world? I don't know how to make it any more affordable for people, because otherwise you're going to spend thousands and thousands on coaching calls. So
absolutely.
Check out designlaunchgrow.com. We'd love to work with you, because our mission is to help as many people as possible take their ideas, take that thing that's inside them, get it out into the world, become successful, and help their clients make their lives better and create incredible businesses for themselves so they can create the freedom and the lifestyle that they desire.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, we hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time on the show.